I'm Michaela O'Connell, and today we are going to have a look at a scheme on Impressionism I taught my 5th year class over the course of 6 lessons. Rationale for this scheme. Impressionism is a fundamental part of the Leaving Cert Art History syllabus. This is due to the fact that Impressionism was the first radical departure from traditional art. This scheme investigates where Impressionism came from and what factors influenced the radical breakaway from traditional art. Students must also have an understanding of what Impressionism is about. By this I mean the characteristics which combine to make this art movement one of the most identifiable styles in the history of Western art. And of course, why was Impressionism so important? It's essential for students to recognise how significant this art movement was and why. Throughout this scheme there will be an emphasis on how the invention of photography at this time made traditional painting obsolete. Painting needed a new identity, and Impressionism provided this. Abstraction started here, and pretty much every art movement has been affected by this since. Aims of this scheme: to study the background of Impressionism. Where did it come from and what was it influenced by? To give insight into the lives and work of Monet, Manet and Renoir, their individual approach and contribution to this movement. We will study 2 paintings by each artist throughout this scheme. We will also identify and discuss the techniques, concepts and characteristics of Impressionist art. And we will critically assess works associated with this movement and adapt this knowledge to various exam questions. Learning outcomes for this scheme. Students will be able to discuss the developmental effects Impressionism had on 19th century painting. They will be able to compare and contrast in detail the individual characteristics of Monet, Manet and Renoir's work with focus on their technique, subject matter and style. Students will be able to write a detailed and objective essay on the above artists and their contribution to this movement. They will also be able to describe and illustrate these works. Teaching methods and resources. PowerPoint presentations. I used PowerPoint presentations to briefly introduce students to each artist and their work. Presentations were sufficient in delivering important information, but they were more so used as a tool to initiate a more discussion-based approach. Presenting the work of an artist through a PowerPoint presentation is an effective visual stimulant for students, as I could direct their attention to various aspects of the painting, whilst keeping a firm communication with the entire class. Question sheets. While the painting was projected on a large screen, I gave a question sheet to each student and asked them to discuss the technique, style and subject matter of that painting. Question sheets were focused on poignant aspects of the work to familiarise students with approaching a painting in a structured manner. This approach encourages students to individually and creatively assess a painting before they are given a more in-depth analysis on it by the teacher. This is an effective way to focus a student's attention to significant aspects of the painting in comparison to loosely asking them to give an evaluation of the work. Students are forced to think for themselves in this case, instead of regurgitating information they have learned off. This is an effective tool for students in an exam-type situation. If, example, they have been given an Impressionist painting they have not studied, they will be able to adapt their overall information of the subject to make an informed and objective analysis. This is an example of a question sheet handed out in class on Edward Manet's work. Questions asked are: do you like this painting and why? How do you think the nude woman is feeling and why? What do you notice about this style of painting and the techniques that are used? And how do you feel as a viewer analysing this painting? What do you think the artist is trying to say, and do you think this is an adequate representation of real life? Is the artist telling a story, making a statement, or painting an actual scene? This is an example of a revision sheet given at the end of class. Notes written around the image illustrates to students how closely they must investigate a painting to give an in-depth analysis. Below the image is a brief analogy of important information discussed throughout the lesson, such as the year, title and artist of this painting, the subject of the painting, symbolism and meaning within the piece, and characteristics of Impressionism explored, such as composition, colour, light, subject matter, style, and technique. DVDs and books. During our last lesson we watched an educational DVD on Impressionism, whilst 2 books on Impressionism were passed around the room for students to read. I felt that this was a great way to end the scheme, as it successfully condensed all of the aspects of Impressionism we had covered in class, in an alternative way. Students really enjoyed this DVD, which enhanced aspects of Impressionism previously discussed in class, as well as bringing new ideas to our attention, which initiated class discussion at the end of this lesson also. Teaching strategies and methods. Visual aids such as PowerPoint presentations and handouts are used as a means of delivering a structured and discovery-based approach to investigating Impressionism. Class-based discussion is a teaching method which engages students and creates a sense of curiosity and independent thinking. This is provoked through strategically posing difficult questions towards the group and easier questions towards the individual. Repetition and revision sheets focus students' learning towards essential aspects of Impressionism and gives an immediate indication of how they are grasping the work. Assessment of learning outcomes. Assessment of daily question sheets record the development of students' learning and also how targeted their approach is in analysing the work of art in relation to the question asked. Oral questioning in class is an immediate indication of students' knowledge of the subject and also acts as a learning and revision tool for all students. 2 essays will be completed throughout the scheme to assess learning. In addition to this, there will be a class test. These more formal assessments will help students decipher what areas of this subject they must improve on, and they will each receive a detailed account of strengths and weaknesses evident in their work. This is an example of a sketch drawn in class in an exam. This indicates the student's familiarity of the painting discussed in relation to subject matter, technique and composition. In this particular case, the student ran out of time, and so this aspect of the paper is a little short on detail and rushed. Time management is an area the student must improve on. However, this student had previously managed to acknowledge the majority of significant elements they were asked to describe in the test. This class exam and both essays completed were corrected using the same assessment rubric, and this particular student received 70% for this paper. Assessment rubric. There are 4 significant parts to this assessment rubric. I found that this rubric not only helped when evaluating the essays and class examinations, but also in structuring the essay questions they were given. I referred to both higher level and lower level exam papers when assembling this rubric, and also referenced the art history books students were using to ensure that it was exactly relevant to the way in which their exam question would be corrected in the Leaving Certificate. Provision for special needs. There was a combination of honours and pass students in this class. They had not yet been segregated. Learning was aided through revision sheets and word phrase sheets. I used a variety of teaching methods to appeal to oral and visual learners. I also used a higher level standard of language when discussing Impressionism in class, as I wanted to challenge the entire group. However, I repeatedly explained the meaning of all terms used to ensure none of the students became lost in translation. Evaluation of delivery of lessons. My strengths in this scheme. I had a structured formula with a variation of learning techniques, which helped keep students alert and interested in class. There was a strong sense of communication with the students, which was strengthened through class discussions. Consistency in teaching methods meant that students became more vocal throughout class discussions, and were more alert during the delivery of information, as they knew they would be asked questions on it afterwards. My weaknesses in the scheme. In the beginning of the scheme I had a tendency to rush through information. I also asked unchallenging questions which failed to initiate a discussion. However, I was aware of these mistakes, and as I became more comfortable in the class, I focused on fixing these issues through practice and extra preparation before class. That's my scheme on Impressionism. Thank you.